Cemeteries are supposed to be places of eternal rest, but what happens when the dead become restless? When a family believes they have found their next chapter to happily ever after, they soon realize that they've been enshrouded in a fog of darkness. As the paranormal torment intensifies, will they survive the demonic barrage, or will hell take them? This is the untold story of the Pennington family haunting, which took place in North Carolina, also known as the Back from the Grave case. This is a story I would not suggest you listen to if you're alone or in the dark, unless you like a challenge. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, often called the Twin City, is most famous for its deep roots in the tobacco and textile industries. It's also known as the City of the Arts, given its unique cultural background. But this seemingly normal place on the surface, like many outwardly normal places, has an underbelly of darkness. Our story begins in 2008. Jamie Bruce and Aaron Pennington are a longtime couple who, through teamwork, have decided to purchase their first house. They find a deal that seems to be straight out of their dreams. The home they find is in the historic Jackson Acres area and is right in their budget. And although it'll take a little work with some small fixes, it's perfect for them. It was a good size, close to Jamie's family, and overall a solid start for the couple. Upon moving in, all seemed normal and quiet, but lurking within the shadows, something unseen was watching them. The couple enjoyed their new neighborhood and often took advantage of the local playgrounds and parks. One park in particular, which was just a few homes down and across the street from them, seemed to become their children's favorite, and interestingly, it was attached to a cemetery. The cemetery, which dated back to the Civil War, was family-owned and kept. One afternoon, as the couple was spending time with their two children, daughter Lacey, who was a year old, and son Mason, who was 3, at the park, and on their way headed back to their house, they decided to take a look inside the cemetery as well. As Jamie steps inside to look at the various graves and headstones, she can't help but notice after a moment that her son seems to be staring at something from beyond the cemetery gates. It's almost as if he sees something that she can't. As she walks back towards her son, his eyes seem firmly locked towards the direction of a large tree within the cemetery itself. She calls his name, but yet his attention stays locked. Finally, she approaches him and taps him on the shoulder, asking just what he was looking at. The young boy seems startled at his mother's touch, and in response he replies with, "I just want to go home, Mom." Jamie, finding this odd, but not dwelling on it too much, obliges him. That night, as the moon hangs high over the Pennington household, the family slept soundly, but something else, however, was wide awake and watching. Aaron, who worked for a trucking company as a manager, works second and occasionally third shift, depending on when the trucks would finally arrive. As one can imagine, this puts the majority of the responsibilities of raising the children and the house duties on Jamie, as well as makes the couple seeing one another more difficult, but they do what they can to make it all work. One night, after putting the children to bed and laying down in bed herself, as her eyes close and she begins to drift off to dreamland, Jamie is suddenly woken up by the sounds of her young daughter crying in her crib. Her cries, however, escalate from normalcy to a fever pitch, unlike any she has heard before. Jamie then quickly rushes out of bed and sprints towards her children's room, trying to figure out just what was going on. As she reaches the doorway, she sees that her son is also awake alongside her daughter. As she quiets baby Lacey, she asks Mason just what had happened to prompt both of them waking up. And to her horror, the young boy answered with, "A man came out of the mirror." Thinking that perhaps the young boy had had a nightmare and maybe woke up with a sound or a cry which then startled the baby, she tries to quell his fears by investigating the room and showing him by opening the closets and checking underneath the bed that there was no such man in the room, nor was there anyone hiding anywhere. The kids eventually fall back asleep, but Jamie, finding the whole thing strange to say the least, decided to stay up to see and talk to her husband. Several hours later, when Aaron arrives back home, she greets him in the living room and tells him just what had occurred. In Aaron's own words, "I found this to be very strange because it was completely out of the ordinary for my son to be making something up like this." The following morning, while Aaron takes Mason with him to run errands, Jamie is doing chores around the house. As she finishes up the dishes and begins walking out of the kitchen towards the hallway, she suddenly begins hearing a strange series of banging noises emanating from the kitchen behind her. Turning around to see just what those sounds could be, she cautiously makes her way back into the room. A chill soon overtakes her very soul. All the windows and every single cabinet door, including the ones at the very top towards the ceiling, were all open. Weirded out but trying to cope with hearing and seeing something she couldn't explain, she tries to tell herself that surely she had just accidentally opened them during her tasks and forgot about it. But deep down, she would later admit in interviews, she knew something was very wrong. Attempting to brush off the incident, she continues on with her day. Later that evening, as the sun settled on the horizon, Jamie is giving Mason a bath. As she gets up from the tub to grab her son a towel, she goes from the bathroom and into the hallway towards one of the closets. As she takes several steps towards it, she hears her son talking in the bathroom. He's not just saying a few words to himself. It seems as if he's having a very serious conversation with someone. However, there is no one there with him. Calling out to him, she asks Mason, "Are you talking to someone?" In which he replied with, "Yes." Finding this extremely odd, she grabs the towel and quickly makes her way back to the bathroom. Upon asking just who her son was speaking with, the young boy replied with, "Gable." Thinking that maybe her son was just using his overactive imagination, she asks him if Gable was one of his toys, to which he replied with, "No, he's a man. He was just here talking to me, and he left just before you came back." A chill runs down Jamie's spine. Could it be possible that her son was speaking with someone that she couldn't hear or see? Could they all be experiencing a haunting? That night, as the family spends time together in the living room, Aaron decides to ask his son just where did he hear the name Gable. Expecting to hear that perhaps his son had heard it elsewhere, such as from another child or from something on TV, he becomes far more concerned when Mason tells him that Gable himself had told him that that was his name. As they further question the boy, expecting for this whole thing to be some kind of imaginary friend situation, Mason instead insists that Gable is a very real person and one that he sees and speaks with daily. Aaron then asks Mason that if Gable is real, then where was he? To which his son pointed towards his room. He then asks his son to go and get him. In later interviews, Aaron would say that, "In that moment, my heart dropped a bit when my son said that Gable was in the back bedroom." Mason then proceeds to walk into the back bedroom and begins having what seems like a coherent conversation with someone or something that they can't hear respond back to him. He then returns to the living room. When Aaron asks him just where Gable was, the boy eerily responds with, "He's right here beside me." The young boy seems adamant that there was someone there with him. She asks him just what was 7 plus 4, knowing that her son couldn't add numbers quite yet like that. To her shock and amazement, after several seconds, he answers with 11. In Jamie's words, our mouths just dropped. What were we to think now? Just what were we even supposed to do or believe? Do we believe him now or not? Not sure of what else to say or think. The couple sits for a moment in silence, with goosebumps overtaking them. In the weeks that follow, it's not just Mason's parents who come to believe that perhaps their son is telling the truth. A longtime friend and babysitter by the name of Pam Marsh is also becoming a believer. In her own words, Mason's demeanor let us all know that this was something very serious. By the look on his face, we questioned him, and the answers he gave us, just how he gave them to us, led us to believe that he really believed that Gable was real and was there. It was truly odd that he believed so intensely, and it was pretty weird that this young boy was so deadly serious. In an effort to seek some kind of rational answer to this whole thing, Jamie visits Mason's preschool teacher. She asks several general questions about how her son was doing and performing, which was all good, and then she asks if the name Gable meant anything to the teacher, to which the teacher would reply with a very confused no. She also confirmed that the name didn't belong to any student or faculty, for that matter, nor had it come from any of the stories that she had read to the class. In the days to come following meeting with Mason's teacher, as Jamie is home, she's alert and watching for any signs of anything unusual. It had become all too familiar to her, whether the children were there or if she was completely alone, that something was watching her, something that she couldn't see. The house that had once felt like a home was feeling more and more like a prison. One night, while the children are sleeping and Aaron is away at work, Jamie seeks comfort and advice from her friend Pam, as she talks with her on the phone just about everything that had been taking place. Her conversation is soon interrupted by the sound of rattling chains. Believing that someone had broken into the house, she very cautiously, with her friend still on the phone, begins to walk towards where the noise is coming from. Unnervingly, it's originating from her children's room. As she quietly makes her way towards the room and gets within a foot or so of the cracked door, the rattling suddenly stops. Gently, she pushes the door open, only to reveal the sight of both of her children fast asleep. Not only did Pam on the phone also hear the strange noises, she's not totally sure how the kids didn't wake up due to how loud it all was. Scared now, and not sure of what to make of the strange situation, she lets her friend go and decides to call Aaron. Aaron, who is a skeptic in general, tries to calm his wife down by telling her that he believed that she had indeed heard something, but that surely there had to be an explanation for it, and surely it wasn't any kind of ghostly chains rapping against the floor, that perhaps it had been something rattling within the air ducts of the house. He manages to calm her down enough to settle down, but deep inside, Jamie knows that something is wrong with this house, and really this entire situation, and it truly bothers her that despite her best efforts, there is seemingly no explanation for the bizarre things that have been happening, and little would she know that these events would be far from the last to occur. Several days later, as Jamie is doing laundry in another part of the house, she has a baby monitor video tablet on the dryer to watch her kids in the minutes that she's away doing chores. Upon loading some clothes into the washer, she glances up at the monitor and sees something very concerning. In her own words, "I looked up from the laundry at the baby monitor and saw what appeared to be a thick smoke enveloping the room. It was going from one side of the screen to the next. Panicking, believing that there was a fire in the house, she runs from the laundry room at a dead sprint to her children's room to ensure their safety. As she rushes down the hallway, she throws open the door to their room. However, there's no smoke, no smell of fire, and her children are completely fine, still asleep in their beds. In her own words, there was no smell and no smoke, There was nothing. I called Aaron and he said that if I saw smoke, that there had to be an explanation as to why. When Aaron returns that morning, he quickly begins to try and troubleshoot just how or why his wife would have seen smoke that wasn't there. His conclusion was that it had to have been some kind of glitch or static on the baby monitor that perhaps his wife had misinterpreted as smoke at a glance. Jamie, however, is convinced of what she saw, and her conviction was that perhaps this had something to do with Gable, that some kind of unseen force was trying to communicate with her. Later that night, in order to have peace of mind, the couple brings their 2 children to sleep with them in their room. However, in the middle of the night, baby Lacey is restless. As Aaron and Jamie try to quell her cries, she seems inconsolable. Jamie believes that it could have something to do with what has been happening in the house, that they're all in one way or another being stalked by this unexplained presence. In the weeks to come, Jamie begins to hear the sound of disembodied laughter when she tries to sleep, often when Aaron is gone at work. This laughter sounds like a child, but would often morph into something darker, and its pitch would go higher and lower an octave, something that terrified the poor woman. Jamie, confiding in her friend Pam about what had continued to take place at their house, tells her that although she didn't believe in ghosts before, she's starting to now, and that she's not so sure that Gable is the only entity that could be stalking her family. One night, she's woken up once again by the sound of laughter emanating from around her in the darkness of her room. In her own words, "When I heard the laugh, it was loud and was only about 2 or 3 feet away from me, and it was just so real. And that's when I finally realized that all of this was real, that there was something in my house, and I was terrified." Later that night, when Aaron returns from work, he comes home to find his wife and children asleep in the living room. Figuring that something else had to have happened, he sits down next to them in one of their chairs and contemplates just what they'll do next. As he thinks from within the darkness of the house, he begins to hear what appears to be music. In his words, "I was sitting there, and suddenly I began to hear 3 distinct notes repeat over and over again. This continued for at least 5 minutes. As a result of this, he cautiously gets up and begins approaching the basement as the notes continue to ring out from its depths. As he slowly descends the stairs and reaches the bottom, the music continues to be played. He searches everywhere, but continues to hear the music. So he then returns to the upper level of the house, and still searching, he finds nothing. Yet, the haunting melody continues. He very gently wakes his wife and has her verify that he's not crazy, and after she confirms that she hears it as well, the melody suddenly ceases. Finding this creepy to say the least, but accepting the fact that they had no ability to determine what or why, since it was out of their scope of understanding, the couple decides to lay down together to try and get some rest for the night. However, as light rain tapped the windows outside of their home, something from inside its walls continued to lurk. Shortly after dozing off, both Jamie and Aaron are woken up, but this time by a very different sound. This time it was a muffled series of conversations, seemingly intertwined with some kind of strange yet terrifying chanting. Similar to the melody, they have no idea where it's coming from. As the chant oscillates between lower and higher pitches, it hits a part of their souls that beyond horrifies them. They both now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, know that whatever they were experiencing was paranormal and that they needed help immediately. The following day and into the night, Jamie, using her laptop, scours the internet, seeking any help or information, really, that could help her figure out just what was happening in their house. She's not having much luck. However, hope seems to find her. Aaron, while on his lunch break at work, overhears a radio program discussion with an author and paranormal researcher by the name of Bill James. And through this interview, he begins to gain some knowledge on just how these things work. One of the ways these entities feed off you, James said, is by creating havoc in your life. Any anger or sorrow or strong emotions they feed off of to gain energy for themselves. That if you cut this off, that it effectively starves them, and the cycle of constant provoking and torment over time will cease. That one, through self-regulation, must effectively retake their space and face their fears. Interested in figuring that they had nothing to lose, Aaron calls his wife and tells her just what he had heard. Although the prospect of anything otherworldly messing with her and her family terrifies Jamie deeply, her love for Aaron and the kids far outweighs her fear. She decides that she must be brave and stand up to whatever these things were. Particularly when Aaron was at work, activity seemed to flare up, almost as if she was being targeted, that perhaps her emotions were some of the strongest that these entities could feed off of. Shortly after this phone call, as Jamie sits in the living room on her laptop as her children sleep, Mason suddenly wakes up. As she heads over to ask him why he was awake, thinking that perhaps the boy had a bad dream, he says that Gable had touched his shoulder and woke him up to play. Remembering what she and her husband had just discussed, Jamie then asks Mason if Gable was there and with them, after which he points to his room and says that that's where he went. She decides that she will make a stand here and face him. Gathering herself, she calls out towards the room, telling Gable that he needed to leave. After a moment of silence, Mason tells her that Gable heard her and was leaving. In the weeks following this night, the house becomes quiet, almost peaceful. However, what they don't realize is that they're like a mouse in a den of snakes. Jamie, meanwhile, continued to reclaim her house. One night, as she does laundry, she feels the sensation of someone or something grabbing the back of her pant leg. She becomes startled, but tries to ignore whatever it could be as to not give it more fuel. As she walks over and starts the dryer, however, is when all hell breaks loose. Within moments, an invisible force grabs her calf and then, lifting it up, begins to pull. Jamie, who of course is petrified at what's happening, screams out while grabbing onto nearby shelves and the dryer itself for stability. The attack then suddenly stops. Frantic now, she runs across the house and calls Aaron and demands that he come home. They both now knew that whatever this thing or these things were, that they could physically interact with them, and that this was now an immediate threat. Aaron hangs up the phone with his wife and immediately rushes home. Upon stepping through the door and consoling her, he now knows that he must confront the darkness that has infested his house. He makes his way to the laundry room, and feeling a rage building inside, he begins to call the entities out, demanding that they show themselves, saying that they were weak for targeting his wife and children. He lets them have it, so to speak. The entities this time, however, decide to remain elusive and within the shadows. They do not reveal themselves. Jamie the following day once again confides in her friend Pam about the ongoing and worsening paranormal experiences within her home. Pam then does some research of her own and makes contact with paranormal investigators by the name of Pam Nance and Ashley Field. Within the coming days, she's able to meet with them both, and they decide to make their way to Jamie and Aaron's house. As they approach the home and they're driving past the old cemetery, the investigators ask Pam if the family has ever visited this place. Remembering the several times in which they had, she answered yes, and that to the investigators seemed to be the possible catalyst for what was now plaguing them, that they had perhaps unknowingly brought an attachment home with them. As they all park and approached the residence, there was a general feeling of anxiety that hung in the air, like humidity. Upon entering and speaking with the couple, the group then begins their investigation. One of the first things they noticed was that there were high levels of electromagnetic energy. They tried to debunk just how this would be, but didn't seem to find any explainable reason. Following this, the two decide to place a video camera to record themselves, as they then simultaneously record with a digital recorder as they try to communicate with anything that could be present there with them. As the EVP or electronic voice phenomena session began, the group started asking questions to whatever presence could be there. The energy then of the entire home began to shift. It began to feel similar as when electricity charges in the moments just before a thunderstorm is unleashed. Something was bubbling just below the surface. As their questions rang out, they soon began to receive answers. Different words that manifested through the static. Different voices, that of a man and that of a little girl, seemed to come through first. In the words of Ashley Field, "I rarely, if ever, hear words with my naked ear during an investigation, but this one was different." The feeling of unease by this point could be felt by everyone present. The session was taking place in the children's room, and there was a large mirror within it, and this mirror seemed to be a focal point of dark energy. It is believed that mirrors can serve as portals or doorways between our world and others. Stories of mimics and other figures showing themselves through them have been reported by many, as well as entities manifesting and physically stepping through them. Could this mirror be serving as just that, a means for those who aren't meant to be here to access our realm? Feeling as though there was an otherworldly and potentially malicious presence surrounding the mirror, the investigators decide to take action. Ashley Field, using an old folklore cleansing technique that originated in Appalachia, takes a lemon water mixture and pours it onto a towel. She then wipes the glass surface of the mirror. It is believed that this technique seals portals within the mirror, rendering them closed, thus trapping the power within and effectively blocking anything that could be trying to come through. In Ashley's own words, "Cleansing is all about intent. It's not a power that someone gives to you. It's what you're putting out into the world. If you're putting out good and pushing away the bad, it's like getting away from bad people." Believing the portal to be sealed, the team now focuses on what could be remaining that had already come through. They decide to utilize smudging or the burning of sage to cleanse the house of any remaining entities and their negative energy. After cracking several windows to allow airflow, starting in the center of the room, as the smoke billows from the sage bundle and begins to fill the air, Ashley then fans it outward to push anything that could be there away and out of the house. She does this room by room. Upon finishing, she utilizes a Christian Southern technique for cleansing spirits. She takes blessed salt and combines it with holy water in a bowl, and then, starting in the center of the room, begins flicking it outward. This technique is based off of baptism tides, that by pushing the negative energy away, it mimics tides that are utilized to wash one's sins away. Upon finishing this, the group decides to resume their efforts investigating to see if anything remains within the home. To their shock, as they resume the EVP session and call out, they further receive answers. The entities, despite their efforts, remain. Pam, as part of the investigation, takes several photos of the house and upon review, sees several dark and eerie shadows within them. Refusing to give up and believing that perhaps the original haunting did indeed originate at the cemetery, they decide to take a trip there with Jamie, Aaron, and Pam. As they scour the graves and read the names written upon the old stones, they come across one that stands out to them. It belonged to a man named Gabriel Jackson. From here, they decide to depart the cemetery and embark on seeing if they can find out any more information about Gabriel and anything else that could be contributing to this haunting. The team, through those efforts, were able to discover that a plantation once existed on the land where their house now sat, that Gabriel was the son of the man who had owned the plantation, and that he had fought and died in the Civil War. They believed that Mason had possibly been mispronouncing his name or communicating it the best way he could to those around him. The voice they had captured of a little girl they believed could be possibly linked to that of a young girl who had drowned on the property back during its plantation days. With this knowledge, the team arranged for another visit with the family to attempt to fully cleanse and hopefully solve their haunting. But will they be successful? Upon arrival, the team explains to the family that they must reclaim their space using the knowledge of who they believed the entities to be, along with their intent and prayer. Since Jamie had been the main person to experience the phenomena, they believed that she should do the cleansing. As she began to say the Our Father prayer out loud, images of all her experiences within the home began to flash in her mind's eye. Feeling fearful at first, but pushing through, however, she completes the prayer through her resilience with the utmost intent. With the final words leaving her lips, she and the rest of those present began to feel an overwhelming change of energy within the home, and they all would come to the conclusion that the entities had moved on. Following this, the team and the family exchange goodbyes, and Aaron and Jamie are finally able to move on with their lives. Interestingly, through conversations with their neighbors, they would come to find out that they weren't the only ones experiencing paranormal activity. This revelation leads them to believe that it is the land itself that's haunted. The land itself perhaps carried the scars and trauma of the living, and thus those buried beneath it never truly got to rest. Before we conclude this harrowing story, I did want to share my thoughts and some updated information in regards to the family. This case, like so many, just goes to show that many people, myself as well, even within suburbia, have experienced paranormal activity, that these happenings or these hauntings can occur just about anywhere and to anyone. While I found a lot of details of this case interesting, I'm just going to touch on a few of them. I find the whole notion of otherworldly entities passing through mirrors as if they were portals to be absolutely terrifying. Considering my own father saw a demonic manifestation in the mirror at one of the haunted homes I grew up in, I've always just been terrified that I'd go to look into the mirror one day and something that wasn't my own reflection might be staring back at me, and that thought is beyond unnerving. I did also find the cleansing methods and the folklore or reasoning behind them to be very interesting as well. I'm curious just why a lemon would work in particular, or what the belief behind it is. And I did find the use of blessed salts and holy water to be pretty cool as well. I personally utilize sage in my cleansings, and really all of it combined with the intent aspect I found fascinating. I'm curious if any of you have used any of these methods if you've cleansed a space. Let me know down in the comments below. In regards to the family, I tried my absolute best to find updates on them and to be able to share ones that wouldn't compromise their privacy, and all that I could find was that Aaron, if it was indeed the same one I found that was involved in the case, seems to be active in the paranormal community in his specific neck of the woods. It's always cool to see a skeptic become a believer through their own experiences, and then want to help enlighten others about the paranormal. I believe he and Jamie continued to live at the house after the cleansing and reclamation. Whether they're still there or not, I'm not sure, but regardless of wherever they are, I hope they're doing well and thriving, and I hope my rendition of their story did it justice. I did also look into the paranormal investigators that were featured on this case, and to my knowledge, they're still active and doing what they did in this case, and that's investigating the paranormal and potentially helping people, which is always commendable. This story has been covered on a few platforms, including the show A Haunting, which is one of my all-time favorites, and I enjoyed rewatching this episode as I delved into the case alongside my research. So with that all being said, what are your thoughts on the case as a whole? Do you have any additional insight or details that you could add? Or have you yourself experienced a haunting? Let me know down in the comments below. As I mentioned earlier, I myself grew up in 2 haunted houses. And if you don't know my story, I'll link that video below. Or if you enjoy reading, you can check it out in my book, which is Stories from the Archives Volume 2, which is available at my store at mysteryarchives.store. There you can also find my other books and merch. If you liked the video, please leave it a like, subscribe, and share it around so that others can find and see it. All those things help me out tremendously. And if you'd like to watch my content ad-free, consider joining Tier 2 or higher over at my Patreon at patreon.com/mysteryarchives. I truly hope you enjoyed this return to form style paranormal video. I'm delving back into my roots, and it's reawakening my fascination both with paranormal cases and hauntings, as well as my love for writing. You know, sometimes the grind of life wears us down, and it can take a toll on our passions. But we have to remember why we love to do what we do, whether it's for a career or just for fun. And I think I'm getting back to where I need to be with it all. And just thank you guys so much for the support and making it all truly worthwhile. I can never truly express just how thankful I am for that. So again, truly from the bottom of my heart, thank you, and I appreciate you all. As always, guys, this has been Cody here at Mystery Archives. Make sure to stay safe out there from anything creepy that can be seen or is unseen. And take care. I'll see you next time.